ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः. ओम कठोपनिषद. दैवैरत्रापि विचिकित्सितं पुरा न हि सुविज्ञेयमनुरेश धर्मः. अन्यं वरं नचिकेतो वृणीष्व मामोपरोत्सीरतिमासृजैनम्. On this point, even the gods have doubted in olden times. Verily, the subject is very subtle. It is not easy to understand. O Nachiketas, choose another boon. Do not press me on this. Give this up for me. Here onwards, we shall find a series of stanzas in which Lord Death is testing his disciple. There are hundreds of people who, though immature, might stumble themselves upon a doubt or two on themes transcendental. All such people are not generally ripe in intellect or pure in mind, sufficiently to grasp the subtle truth as discussed in the Shastras, to give out the absolute standpoint and to discuss with them directly the divine nature of the immortal soul is wasteful effort which shall not produce any effect upon the hearers. Great masters therefore always test their disciples, and only when the disciples are found to be fit for the great initiation do they deliver the goods as such. This does not mean that the Vedantic principles are to be kept as closed secrets and are to be given out only to a select few. Vedanta knowledge is the birthright of man. It belongs to all at all times. This kind of a wise discrimination is actually being practiced in our everyday life by almost all of us. For example, if an infant child were to inquire of his father, "Dad, how does it rain?" the dad, if he be intelligent, would tell the child explanation will not, cannot appeal at the earlier stage. It is only in this sense that the teacher tests the student's maturity and then gives out his discourses according to the standard and category to which the particular disciple belongs. Lord Death is here trying to examine Nachiketas, the seeker. He, in an assumed air of sincerity, says to the Brahman boy that he dares not waste the blessing of one of his boons in explaining a futile inquiry of the boy. What happens to the soul after death? The topic is so subtle and difficult to understand. Deva means effulgent, meaning those divine ones who live in the heavens and who have in their makeup an ampler potency of intellect and mind. The gods have a greater capacity to feel and to reason out, and also they have a longer period of existence to inquire, analyze, and understand such themes. Even they, says Lord Death, have not yet come to a final understanding. Little child to hold theme, let alone to experience it. Indeed, Lord Death has very efficiently argued in this stanza against Nachiketa's insistence for an answer to his question. We must always remember that Lord Death had no intentions of evading the question. Probably more than the disciple, the Guru was anxious to give knowledge, but unless the recipient has the required receptivity. It is not only futile but at times even dangerous to give out the sacred truths of Vedanta to such an unprepared candidate, for the lesser intellects are apt to misunderstand the real import and purpose of the Shruti declarations. Vedanta, when rightly understood, can make a pure devotee a god upon earth, but it shall make the student a devil if he is not properly conditioned to receive the knowledge in its right bearing and significance. A matchbox, a blessing in the hands of a grown up, may be a danger in the hands of a child. दैवैरत्रापि विचिकित्सितं किल त्वञ्च मृत्यो यन्न सुविज्ञेयमात्थ वक्ताच्चास्य त्वादृगन्यो न लभ्यः नान्यो वरस्तुल्य एतस्य कश्चित्. Thou sayest, O death, that even the gods have doubts here, and that sayest, thou sayest, O death, that even the gods have doubt here, and that this is not so easy to know. None other teacher like thee who can tell of this can be found. No other boon can at all equal this. Of Lord Death's tempting words in the last stanza were a masterpiece in their suggestiveness for psychoanalysis. The unrelenting words of firm resolve to know and to understand, as expressed by the student here, are equally a great masterpiece. According to the student, there are no boons which can be equal to an answer to this great question of the beyond, since the fruits gained from all the boons are finite and perishable, as they are all mere material gains. Again, if even the gods could not, of their own accord, sit and successfully reach a final understanding of the nature of the Atman, it is out in the fitness of things that we, the men of the world, need a great master to give us this knowledge, and we can have no greater master than Lord Death himself. शतायुषः पुत्रपौत्रान् वृणीष्व बहून् पशून् हस्तिहिरण्यमश्वान् भूमेर्महदायतनं वृणीष्व स्वयं च जीव शरदो यावदिच्छसि. Choose sons and grandsons who may live 100 years, herds of cattle, elephants, gold, and horses. Choose a vast territory on earth. Live yourself as many autumns years as you like. Lord Death is now continuing his endless charms to test the caliber of the student. Unless a seeker has come to feel a complete detachment from the delusory charms of the sense objects, there is no hope for him to get attached to the real and the permanent world of truth. Hence, the justice in such severe trials meted out by the masters to their beloved students. These examinations are held in our Vedic system, not in the present day spirit of breaking the student, but they were conducted with a view to making the student. If in case a student unfortunately falls below the standards of Vedic expectation, he is not condemned as hopeless forever, but the teacher's instruction would be to purify the ennoble the student and thereby lift him up to the highest standards of efficiency. The list of offered temptations seems to be an exhaustive one, and no ordinary mortal can easily stand against its killing tentacles. Lord Death has offered Nachiketas many sons and grandsons, all centenarians too. Moreover, his list contains material wealth, kingdoms, and power. All those would have been useless if the recipient of these blessings had not himself a sufficient span of life to live. Wealth should be indeed a tragedy to a man who dies young, but Nachiketas is here offered as many years of life as he would like to live and enjoy. एति कामानां त्वा कामभाजं करोमि. Ask for some other boon equal, such as wealth and longevity. Be king of the wide earth, O Nachiketas. I shall make thee the enjoyer of all thy desires. Here is a supplementary list which Lord Death appends to his previous offerings as already contained in the last stanza. Probably at the end of the previous stanza, Lord Death vainly watches for some glow of satisfaction in the face of the pure devotee Nachiketas. Friends, any one of you, at the mere hope of a fair chance of getting some 5 rupees somewhere in another part of this city, would certainly now run away from this Yajnashala. But there is a seeker who has been offered not only 100% sure boon, giving him not only children, grandchildren, gold, cattle, and is completing the list of things offered to see if the boy can be tempted away from his main pursuit. Maybe Nachiketas has some secret desires of his own which have not yet been covered by my long list. This may be probably the cause of the disinterestedness that is evidently written large in the boy's face. Thinking thus, Lord Death invites Nachiketas to ask for any boon of anything that he might cherish a desire for, besides ample wealth and long life. Even after this, Lord Death fails to see in the boy's face any enthusiasm, and so he offers Nachiketas the lordship over the whole world and promises to make him an enjoyer of his all possible desires. All these boons to be exchanged for a simple request to drop the main question: is there an existence after death? What a bargain! And yet, what a sad failure for Lord Death. ये ये कामा दुर्लभा मर्त्यलोके सर्वान् कामागुंश्छन्दतः प्रार्थयस्व. इमा रामाः सरथाः सतूर्या न हीदृशा लम्भनीया मनुष्यैः. Our desires are difficult to attain in this world of mortals. You ask for them all according to thy wish. These fair maidens with their chariots, I will give them death. Even a single unsuspected and unconscious desire worm lurking anywhere in the subconscious ruins the entire psychological makeup of a seeker. A true sadhaka who is marked out for success as he who has come to enjoy a balanced development and spiritual personalities. If any one of them is distorted, then the entire combination becomes ill adjusted, and from such a maladjusted instrument, no true music can emerge. As a true doctor of the soul, Lord Death requests Nachiketas not to insist upon knowing the state of existence after death, but to wish for any material gain or sensuous happiness which may be waiting in him for fulfillment. The student is offered the services of heavenly damsels, divinely beautiful and godly graceful, chariots, horses, ornaments, whatnot. शोभावामर्त्यस्य यदन्तकैतत् सर्वेन्द्रियाणां जरयन्ति तेजः अपि सर्वं जीवितमल्पमेव तवैव वाहास्तव नृत्यगीते. Ephemeral these, O death, these tend to decay the fire vigor of all the senses in man. Even the longest life is indeed short. Let thine alone be the chariots, the dance, and the music. The patient has reacted well to the suggestions of Lord Death, who erstwhile acted as psychiatrists. This is evident from the tone and the word of Nachiketa's answer. Moreover, the very argument hinted at by Nachiketas, based upon which he has come to the same conclusion, that the finite sense objects have no eternal value, clearly shows that Nachiketas, though a boy, has lived a fruitful life of intelligent self analysis and critical discrimination of men and things. He characterizes truly all objects of the senses as finite and ephemeral, and hence his disgust for them. During his short life in the world, he has been living intensely, and in his discrimination, he has come to the wise conclusion that material objects, even if they be heavenly, are but things delusory and so will not last long, even till tomorrow. Shwah abhavah, that is, which are uncertain in their existence. Again, not only the sense objects are in themselves finite, but to meddle with them is to weaken the very instrument of our appreciation and enjoyment. Without the sense organs, the sense objects cannot influence our minds and produce therein any experience either of joy or sorrow. When the light of Nachiketa's discrimination comes to play fully upon them, it becomes clear that the disastrous sense objects, themselves perishable, would also hasten the deterioration of the sense organs. The first laddu may be sweet, but the fifth one may not be so sweet. The 20th laddu may be full of pain, and the 42nd one would be cruelty manifest. Such being the case, no thinking individual who has the courage of intellectual conviction to pursue only the path shown by his intellect will run after the material pleasures born of ephemeral objects, however glorious they may look for the time being. As whatever be the span of allotted, there is after all a death lurking at the end of it all, and death is equally painful whether it be today or 1,000 years afterwards. And hence, at the peak of his disgust, born out of a right understanding, Nachiketas cries, "Keep thou thy chariots, the dance and the music." One must be a true Guru himself to realize the ocean of joy Lord Death must have felt at this seemingly outrageous explosion of the young boy. This declaration, in its very vehemence, unveils the brilliant inner personality of this matured soul, Nachiketas. To a Nachiketas like student, self realization is immediate and imperative. We get wealth, we shall also live as long as you rule. Therefore, that boon alone is fit to be craved. That mere wealth cannot and will not provide the possessor with a free passport to happiness. Here, debentures and shares to embrace external setups functioning in time, place, and condition. The objects remaining the same mind can react differently upon them according to its condition at the time of the reaction. Thus, pudding, thus pudding which is always sweet, thus pudding which is always sweet may taste unsatisfactorily bitter when the mind that plays behind the tongue is embittered by some immediate sorrow or pain. It is, in fact, only a statement of truth when Nachiketas says that no man can be made happy by wealth only. This is obvious and yet rarely recognized. In life, we too often meet sad rich men. Even millionaires are often known to have committed suicide. Again, argues Nachiketas, having gained all the wealth a man can enjoy, they are available only till such time as he has not met with Lord Death. A dead man shall need no more, not even a penny out of his rich coffers. This very same portion in the stanza can also be interpreted to mean that having met thee, O Lord Death, who can go back poor? Here it means that a mere darshanas of the Lord Death is sufficient to bless the devotee with all material gains, and as such, Nachiketas means to say that it would be unwise to spend out this third boon for the blessing of a thing which he has already come to enjoy. That is, it is indeed a criminal waste, almost amounting to madness, if a schoolmaster labors to gain an interview with the education minister only to request him for an appointment as a schoolmaster in the same school and in charge of the same class. Based upon the above argument, Nachiketas, the wise and discriminating seeker, firmly informs his teacher that the boon he has asked for is all that he demands of the master. Ajiryatam amrutanam upetya jiryan martyak kwadasthah prajanan अभिध्यायन् वर्णरतिप्रमोदान् अतिदीर्घे जीविते को रमेत. What decaying mortals living in the world below and powerful possessed of knowledge, after having approached the company of the undecaying and the immortal, will rejoice in the long life after he has pondered over the nature of the pleasures produced by song and sport, beauty and love. This stanza is not a pessimistic cry of despair that has risen up from a rotten mind and intellect steeped in sensuousness and ignorance, but it is the glorious song of optimism and knowledge born out of a healthy mind and a developed intellect basking in the glory of cloudless wisdom. In its very core, the words contain a burning satire at the human worms that gloat at and revel in the leprous ditch of fleshy enjoyments, and thus waste their precious upon examining the agonizing existence of the men of the world, struggling, trying to possess, laboring to hoard, and hurrying to spend, has at once the sympathetic understanding to find an excuse also for the suicidal mischief of mankind against itself. He says that having approached the company of the undecaying and the immortal, none will come to entertain any attachment of or fascination for the destructible and the dying. Though all religions unanimously claim that man must learn to detach himself from this body mind intellect combination and its relationships, yet it is very rarely understood by the generality of people that this act of detachment a seeker develops, which guides and vitalizes not only the inner equipments as the knower. योऽयं वरो गूढमनुप्रविष्टो नान्यम्. O death, tell us that in which men have this doubt, and which is about the great passing beyond, that is supreme life after death. Nachiketas does not choose any other boon, but that concerning the soul, of which the knowledge is hidden, mysterious. Thus ends the first valley of the first chapter. The opening section of the first chapter is rounded off with a firm and determined demand of the disciple. No temptation was big enough to entice away the aspirators' picture of the absorbing, adorable spirit. Brahmana boy. He has not only a discriminating intellect but also a godly share of the spirit of detachment from the false and saintly attachment with the real. In this first section, we have very little of the Upanishad proper. The philosophy disquisitions start only from the second section. Herein, so far, it was the labor of Shruti Bhagavati to emphasize sadhana chatushtay, that is, the special qualifications demanded of a perfect student of Vedanta in his coming to experience intuitively the absolute truth as his own self. These qualifications are Viveka, it is the capacity to discriminate between the real and the unreal. That is the firm conviction of the intellect that Brahman alone is real and phenomenal world is unreal. Vairagya is the spirit of detachment from the enjoyment of fruits of action here and hereafter. Shat Sampatti, the six ethical perfections are Shama, is the peaceful state of mind when it rests constantly upon contemplation, freed repeatedly from the agitations created by its continuous desire for sense objects. Dhamma is the self control by steering sense organs, both of knowledge and actions, away from their sense objects and placing them in their respective centers of activity, that is, the absorption of rays of perception within their respective sense organs. Uparati is the self withdrawal, that is, that condition of thought waves in which they are free from the influence of external objects. Titiksha is the capacity of the mind to cheerfully endure all sorrows and sufferings like heat and cold, pleasure and pain, etc., without grudging, without struggling for redress, and without feeling helpless or lamenting. Shraddha is the healthy attempt at a clear intellectual appreciation of the exact import of the pregnant words of the scriptures as well as advice of the preceptor, guru, that is, a teacher. Samadhan is the state of poise and tranquility, that is the single pointedness of the mind gained as a result of constant contemplation on the supreme and the divine and a man. Great knowledge, Lord Death said, good is one thing and pleasant is another. Every action of all the living beings is motivated by an irresistible instinct to be happy. Happiness seems to be the goal of every struggle and strife in life. Even a worm crawling in fickle matter, wanders about motivated by a hope that it would reach a point where a greater joy than it is enjoying at the moment. Dharmaraja classifies all actions with reference to their fruits into two divisions. The fruits of actions can be of two kinds, those contributing to the ephemeral joys in life and those leading to the immortal bliss in the beyond. That is to say, our efforts can be such as contributing to some immediate passing material gain, or such as shall contribute to in the long to our self culturing and self purification. A heartless black marketer or a characterless corrupt officer, through foul and fiendish methods, reveling in greed and lust, can win in the hoard money race, and to the ignorant and the sensuous this may appear to be an inviting prospect and a welcoming success too. We as individuals are also free to build our lives upon the more enduring principle of living, such as honesty, piety, truthfulness, mercy, love, tolerance, and so on, and live for the greater wealth of self culturing and the consequent inner peace and joy. It is these two paths of choice freely open for each individual that have been hinted at here by Lord Death when he says, one is good while another is pleasant. That which is good need not necessarily be always pleasant, although there are pursuits which are good and are at once pleasant also. That spiritual hero who consistently sticks to the path of good, unmindful of the unpleasantness and material privations, and who has to suffer in course of his higher pursuits, is the one who reaches the true end, the state of enduring joy. The statement, both these chain a man, is very significant from the highest standpoint of the supreme goal. The path of pleasant abducts the pursuer often into the dangerous jungles of crimes and sins, thereby ensuring him for a long lease of painful existence as conscious being born in the lower wombs yonis. That is, by the pursuit of the pleasant, we are pulling ourselves down and scheming to remain in the lower scale of evolution. Sins and criminalities are blockades over which we tumble to fall back into the lower rungs of the ladder of evolution. In this context, sin is but an act which makes us miss our aim in life. Similarly, to the a conscious following of the path of good, with a desire to enjoy the fruits thereof, would be demanding for ourselves a transfer into the softer planes of consciousness, the worlds of the gods, wherein such people will have to take embodiments to live through the fruits of their meritorious acts to the perfect seeker of the Absolute. Therefore, both the path of pleasant and the path of good are bondages indeed. श्रेयश्च प्रेयश्च मनुष्यमेतस्तौ सम्परीत्य विविनक्ति धीरः श्रेयो हि धीरोऽभिप्रेयसो वृणीते प्रेयो मन्दो योगक्षेमान् वृणीते. Both are good and the pleasant, both the good and the pleasant approach the mortal man. The wise man examines them thoroughly and discriminates between the two. The wise man prefers the good to the pleasant, but the ignorant man chooses the pleasant for the sake of this body, through avarice and attachment, forgetting and keeping. Yoga is acquiring what one does not have, and Kshema is the preservation of it after having obtained, according to Adi Shankaracharya. Life is a series of challenges. Moment to moment, we are faced with, as it were, a question mark to do or not to do that swims towards us in the flood of time. Temptation after temptation approaches us. The future becomes the present, and it, rolling over us, as it were, passes on to merge into the beginningless past. Our intellect and discrimination are called upon to the value each moment independently and to come to a judgment upon things and beings. The material object being infinite, they can never remain the same, even for a single moment. Not as such, their combinations and patterns eternally present in kaleidoscopic variety. With reference to this ever changing pattern, the thinking animal, man is called upon to make independent decision anew from moment to moment to ascertain his relationship with the external. At each challenge, two paths, as it were, are open for us to follow. On one side, we are temptingly beckoned to playfully dance through a seemingly well lit path of pleasant, but the path ultimately leads us to a dark cave of sorrow and endless death, and on the other side lies a quiet, uninviting path, all ill used, winding and uphill, but that which ultimately leads us to the sunlit pasture lands and flowery meadows of eternal living and happiness. This latter path is called the path of good. The wise and discriminating man at each moment intelligently judges the various phases of the challenge he is in and solidly determines ever to stick to the path of good. He continues his pilgrimage and ultimately fulfills the mission of this life. The ignorant one, on the other hand, lives like a mule, following the generality, and leads the path of least resistance, motivated mainly by the animal urges of his body consciousness. He follows the path of pleasant, the sensuous modes of satisfying every demand of the ever craving senses, and thus ultimately stoops so low as to commit state of eternal death in the lower scales of evolution. These words of Lord Death give any intelligent reader a direct and effective clue to the ideal way to live life, and in the end, he can successfully come to claim a real and abiding success. If we are to live each moment in our life as slaves to our passions, lusts, and cravings, we shall, in our thoughtlessness and indiscrimination, slowly sink down to the level of the animals. And that it is certainly but natural that such two-legged animal cannot come to claim the heritage of man, which is real joy and happiness lived in the achieved self perfection. The beautiful idea hinted at in these two opening stanzas of the Valli, second Valli, gives us therefore the theory and the logic of self effort. At each moment of challenge, the path of pleasant and the path of good are stretching open before us. But the Lord of our God does not stand at the junction of these two roads, either of sorrow or to canvass our journey through the path of good. At each moment, man has a limited freedom to follow either the path of good or the path of pleasant. Certainly, man has not a complete and unlimited freedom over the external circumstances, but he has been given this limited freedom to be good or to be vicious in his moment to moment contact with the external world. This limited liberty is the real character of freedom for man, by a wise use of which he can soar into the greater realms of perfection and become himself the God. Religion is indeed an art of self perfection, and this is accomplished by careful living of each moment in wise and studious self discipline. At a moment of challenge, a beginner may find that he has been instinctively driven to act viciously. The power or the force by which an individual is driven to do wicked action in spite of himself is indeed not explained by that pair of idle and empty words which are so often used our destiny. It is the pattern of thought which we have deliberately developed in ourselves by repeatedly thinking in a particular symmetry during our past moments that actually drives us into the wrong or the path right lines of action. Thus, a butcher or a hunter might instinctively feel it quite natural and decent to eliminate his enemy of the moment by killing, while one who has been living and thinking in terms of non-violence might never come to think of eliminating his enemy through death. A barbarian cannibal of the African jungle might not feel any pang of conscience, conscience, conscience in killing his neighbor's child for satisfying his own hunger, while you and I, children of the modern age, living the modern ideologies of citizenship, may not think or even harming our neighbor's son. Think of even harming our neighbor's son, although often he deserves more than death for the nuisance he causes to us. Man is his mind. As we cultivate and train the mind, so shall we become. Tune our minds to the impermanent, lower, value of negativity, and we become gross, insensible, two-legged animals. Train the mind to think and to act in terms of the higher and the permanent values of love, tolerance, mercy, etc. And we get ourselves cultured and perfected to become signatories in our own appointments for the future. We may choose to sign today a death warrant for the future or a life lease in Godhood, and we shall correspondingly come to suffer the death or enjoy the life. There is no destiny beyond and above ourselves. We are ourselves the architects of our future. There seems to be the trend of the wise in the pregnant words of Lord Death, with which he begins the second section here. Satvam priyan priyarupaganश्च कामान् अभिध्यायन् नचिकेतोऽत्यस्राक्षीः नयतां शृङ्कां वित्तमयीमवाप्तो यस्यां मज्जन्ति बहवो मनुष्याः. O Nachiketas, thou hast renounced all these desires and pleasurable objects of pleasant appearances, judging them by their real merits. Thou hast not accepted this road of wealth in which many mortals sink. Here we are listening to an irrepressible outburst of applause which rose from the bosom of Lord Death when he found that such a young Brahman boy as Nachiketas was able to withstand all the trials and temptations. The temptations with which Lord Death wanted to lead the boy into the meshes of sensuous life were such that the entire kingdom of mankind would have easily fallen a victim to them, even if they are not openly invited to enjoy them. That this boy resisted all these temptations and found the strength for the same in his power of intellectual discrimination between the real and the false is an occasion for Lord Death to cheer and applaud him, for rare indeed are such chances for a great master to have the blessings of meeting an equally great student. Nachiketas has been offered not only sons and grandsons, all to live as centenarians, but also music and dance and even the free services of heavenly nymphs. But all these were mere trifles and insignificant toys to the matured spiritual personality in Nachiketas. The word Srunkam has been interpreted both as a garland and also as the path. It may mean to say that Lord Death is surprised at the sense of detachment in Nachiketas, as evidenced in his rejection of the present of the jeweled garland, or as evidenced in this general disgust exhibited for walking the path of wealth. दूरमेते विपरीते विषूची अविद्याया च विद्येति ज्ञाता विद्याभीप्सिनं नचिकेतसं मन्ये नत्वा कामा बहवो लोलुपन्त. These two, ignorance and what is known as knowledge, are wide apart and lead to different ends or goals. I believe Nachiketas to be one who is desirous of knowledge, for even many objects of pleasure have not shaken thee. These first four stanzas may constitute among themselves the stream of thoughts that come to flash through the mind of Lord Death when his team of temptations and trials was so efficiently blockaded at the portals of Nachiketa's bosom by the seeker's own dispassion, vairagya, and discrimination, viveka. Lord Death estimates his observation and the result of his experiment with Nachiketas in this stanza. He says that the path of pleasant and the path of good are both eternally different from each other, since they diverge to reach two different points or destinations, which in their very nature are as opposing as light and darkness. The path of pleasant is the path of ignorance, and the path of good is the path of knowledge. The supreme knowledge, the science of sciences, the Brahma Vidya, can be given out only to one who is a sedulous pursuer of the path of truth. Since Nachiketas has been proved to be one who is a staunch devotee of the path of good, Lord Death here decides in his mind that the Brahmin boy is indeed a fit student for this great knowledge. अविद्यायामन्तरे वर्तमाना स्वयं धीराः पण्डितं मन्यमानाः दन्द्रम्यमाणा पर्यन्ति मूढा अन्धेनैव नीयमाना यथान्धाः. The ignorant who live in the midst of darkness but fancy themselves to be wise and learned go round and round deluded in many crooked ways, just as the blind being led by the blind. The comparison used here is so impressive that this has become a proverbial stanza, and it is often used in criticizing the smaller pandits who take the duties of guiding the society or the community in their assumed privileges as men of knowledge. In criticizing the self-conceited Pharisees in the Bible also we have a similar statement. If the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Any amount of book knowledge cannot make one a real Vidwan unless one has come to live in a spirit of renunciation and live actually a life dedicated in the self purification and self knowledge. Merely book knowledge cannot make one really wise, and a wise one need not necessarily be a great student of books, and yet can be living a life of piety and self control. When the mere bookworms come to glorify the seat of Rajaguru, the society or the country led by such pandits make a direct line towards national ruin and international confusion. Neither mere birth nor parentage can make one a pandit. When such pandits lead, Lord Death says the leader and the led would ultimately reach a similar tragic situation, at once sad and comic, just as when a blind man is led by another equally blind man, deluded in many crooked ways. As a consequence of the individual's cultivated imperfections and spiritual ignorance, he develops desires in his mind for the satisfaction of which he does karmas, good, bad, and indifferent, and thus earns a wealth of reactions to be suffered or enjoyed in unending future births. As a consequence of their indifference to their own real nature, they develop an acute sense of ego and the consequent pain riddled varieties of I-ness and myness. न साम्परायः प्रतिभाति बालं प्रमाद्यन्तं वित्तमोहेन मूढम् अयं लोको नास्ति पर इति माने पुनः पुनर्वशमापद्यते मे. The way to the hereafter is not apparent to the ignorant man who is childish, befooled by the glamour of wealth. This is the only world, he thinks, there is no other, thus he falls again and again under my sway. One who is constantly and entirely engaged in the pursuit of earning, procuring, and hoarding material wealth cannot and will not have either the time or the occasion or the required inner subtlety of heart and head to inquire into the possibilities of a hereafter. So long as the intellect and mind are lying drowned in the vulgar values of life, based upon the thoughtless conclusions and instinctive identification of oneself with one's own body, etc., one shall not come to feel easily any thirst to know or to entertain any urge to go beyond the shackles of mortal limitations. To such men, pure materialists, the life in this plane of consciousness, generally noted for its tears and sweet passing smiles and fleeting joys, is all the life that is. To them, the ideals of a higher and a diviner life do not even suggest as possibilities, even if they are told of the existence of a higher realizable life or greater perfections. They will have neither the intellectual capacity to grasp such a philosophical ideal nor the mental accommodation to feel the divinity. The term child or childish has been used here in a sense different from the sense of the same term used either in Brihadaranyaka or in the Christian Bible. In Brihadaranyaka, on inquiring how the self can be contacted, Yajnavalkya says, let a Brahman, casting aside his learning, take his stand on childhood. Here, the childhood indicates its simplicity and lack of passions. This eternal idea of the sages almost echoes in Jesus' words, except ye become like little children, ye shall not see the kingdom of God. To such childish prattlers, the materialists, this short and uncertain span of existence is all that is a life that came from nowhere, that exhausts itself into a zero, that during its existence lives on without any reference to the past or any ambition for the future. To such men, life is a humdrum scheme of madness, inexplicable and mysterious, logical but meaningless, confusing and confounding. And certainly, such men cannot and will not be fit ones for philosophical contemplation or for the pursuit of strict and conscious life of self control or for the voluntary insistence of a constant self discipline. 1 to 6. The two paths of knowledge and good, of ignorance and pleasure, deluded by the passing joys, Men fall into cheap materialism and become slaves to death. 7. श्रवणायापि बहुवीर्यो न लभ्यः शृण्वन्तोऽपि बहवोऽयं न विद्युः आश्चर्यो वक्ता कुशलोऽस्य लब्धाः आश्चर्यो ज्ञाता कुशलानुशिष्टः. He, the self, of whom many are not able even to hear, the recipient, the pupil, many, even having heard of him, do not comprehend. Wonderful is a man teacher when found, who is able to teach the self. Wonderful is he, the pupil, who comprehends the self when taught by an able teacher. Lord Death continues his thinking out aloud and roars this truth which has been an inspiration even for Sri Bhagavan Vyasa. In fact, Kathopanishad seems to have been the main inspiration for Bhagavan Vyasa to produce the immortal love classic Srimad Bhagavat. Later on, we shall find many stanzas lifted up even at such from even as such from this Upanishad by the philosopher poet in his greatest work of literature and wisdom, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The present stanza re-echoes in the Gita 7.3 Manushanam Sahasreshu, etc. It is 3. Watchman, a person engaged in security duties. It is indeed a well accepted fact in all the Indian schools of philosophy that the higher themes of transcendental contemplation are prescribed only for a select few who have come up to the required evolutionary progress in the inner instruments of thought and feeling. This does not mean to claim that Brahma Vidya is a secret knowledge to be preserved in airtight tombs in a dark corner of some dilapidated temple, and that the Brahman priests should sit guarding over it like wandering hosts that guard their treasures secreted away under some jungle tree. Nor does it mean that, like a dog guarding with a vengeance a haystack, the priest vengeance haystack, the priest should bark at innocent and starving cows that come to enjoy the fund of knowledge piled up in the Upanishads. Whatever may be the wise looking quotations the present day Pandits may bring forth to establish the monopoly of knowledge to a special class or people, it shall all be a blasphemy against the very spirit of the God men who had given us the Shastras. The eternal law provides each one of us with a circumstance in life and an occasion to enjoy or suffer strictly according to and in continuation of our past. Nothing happens in fits and starts. There are no accidents in the eternal law. Moment to moment, life is progressive, continual, and logical. There is a strict mathematics about it all. As such, it is not the lot of everyone even to hear or a greater and immanent hear of a greater and immanent truth that pervades and penetrates the fleeting panorama of life's existence cycle, which is apparent, obvious, and realistic day by day about and around us. that this is a pure statement of fact and not an exaggeration of a missionary should be by now clear to many of you during these days of the Jnana Yajna. Many of you had even come to this very sadhu to report how their relations were daily canvassed by them to come and attend the great yajna. Those who had been persuaded to come to this very door could stand only on the roadside and had, alas, suddenly remembered of the box that had been left open or of the office key that had been kept on the table, and so had to hurry home before the evening satsang had actually started. Those of you who are now here regularly attending may rest assured that they are the rarest few who have come to earn this privilege in the lives before. An assembly of devotees meeting at a place for purposes of discussing and singing the glories of the Lord needs no chowkidar, chowkidar, a person engaged on security duties at the doors. The fit one who carries the ticket alone has an admission into it. It is absurd on the part of a mortal, a seeker himself, to pass judgment upon the fitness or otherwise of another seeker in the absence of the data necessary for striving at such judgments. Preach Vedanta if necessary wherever thou wilt. The fittest one alone will hear the message. Others will be shouldered out by the very authority of the eternal law. Translate the Upanishad into any language you like, distribute them freely round the globe, and yet it is only the fittest one that shall ever come even to peep into it. The secrecy of this secret document need not be guarded by man made protections. This is not an atom bomb secret discovered in a spirit of hatred and preserved as a shameless declaration of man's lust and passion. Brahmavidya is the science of truth, not born of human mind and intellect, and is not maintained for purposes of asserting the lower animal urges in us. As such, the very science has a secret potency to guard itself against all undeserving intruders. Even when heard, the theme of Brahma Vidya is not easy to be understood. Even to understand the right import of the words heard in all their deepest significances, the student needs an inordinate inner purity and a consequent intellectual sharpness. The steadiness of our minds and the acuteness of our intellect are not accidental happenings but are the product of continued and conscious living of the life divine. It is with this principle in mind that our Shastras prescribe for lesser adhikaris, less fit aspirants, the discipline of karma and upasana, worship and meditation. These form the most important technique by which a lesser one of a lower standard, is purified, ennobled, and cultured to a greater degree of competency. It is only when the great ideas of truth and immortality heard either directly from a guru or indirectly from a textbook are well digested in intellectual reflections can they leave any strong impression upon the listener. Study of the Upanishad cannot be pursued in a spirit of drowsy idleness in which one can enjoy a six-penny detective novel. Wonderful is the man who is able to teach. Indeed, if fit students are rare, real masters who can deliver the goods are also rare. A true teacher is one who is not only a God man in his subjective experience of truth, but he is also one who is a great master in the textbook of the Upanishad. The qualities of a teacher are thus described in our sacred books as Shrotriyam and Brahmanishtam, well versed in the Shastras and well established in the God consciousness. The Panditas have the former qualifications fully, but they lack the supreme experience of a direct perception of truth. Many are the well known saints and sages who have an intimate personal experience of truth but have, unfortunately, not the proficiency and mastery over the textbooks. Both these classes cannot claim a right to Gurudom. It is with this idea in mind that Lord Death exclaims that a true teacher is a wonder. It should not be construed that a true teacher is a wonder because of the length of his jata or because he sleeps not, eats not, or goes about naked. These external symbols have nothing to do in determining whether one is fit to be a guru or not. Beware, many aspirants have fallen into this mistake of accepting the outer show to find in the end the inner hollowness. Wonderful is he who comprehends what a rare percentage of the whole can, in each generation, come to live the voiceless joy of life's fulfillment. The chance to hear is rare. Even when heard, people who can digest and understand those subtle ideas are rare. A master who is efficient enough to initiate a student into the absolute and satisfying all his doubts, guide him into the realms beyond, is rarer. And even when an individual is lucky enough to enjoy the blessings of all the above three, Lord Death says, only the luckiest one comes to experience Godhood in this very birth while listening to the teacher discoursing upon the Shruti texts. Friends, from the above, you should not conclude that if it is so rare and difficult, none of us shall ever succeed. Why not? Are you not the rarest few who are regularly attending this Jnana Yajna on this globe of ours in these days of irresponsible and licentious breeding? Seething millions are being roasted in sorrow and salted with tears in the devil's own test, to the devil's own test. Are you not then the very few indeed who are listening to this science of life? No one, no true seeker has a right to be pessimistic. He should be ever consciously optimistic. Remember, behind each one of you there stand a million who can, at their best, grace only the lower rungs of the ladder of evolution. It is for the man animal that Brahma Vidya is rare and difficult. To those who are in the man state of evolution, the achievement of the goal of life is but a mere question of choice and a walk into the temple of perfection. Be optimistic, and if you cannot, each of you may take it from Chinmaya. Thou art a fit adhikari, and with a little self effort, thou shalt reach in this very birth the supreme success and the godly achievement. Never hesitate, never doubt, but sincerely strive and achieve. न नरेणावरेण प्रोक्त एष सुविज्ञेयो बहुधा चिन्त्यमानः अनन्यप्रोक्ते गतिरत्र नास्ति अणीयान्यतर्क्यमणुप्रमाणात्. This self, when taught by a man of inferior intellect, is not easy to be known as it is to be thought of in various ways. But when it is taught by another superior preceptor, who is one with Brahman, who beholds no difference, there is no other way concerning it. The self being subtler and the subtlest and subtler than the subtlest, and is beyond argumentation. Much of the explanation already given under the last stanza must throw enough light upon this mantra. For purposes of emphasis, Lord Death is here voicing forth the very ideas suggested in the earlier stanza. We have already found that neither a mere book knowledge nor a mere experience can be complete qualification for a perfect Guru to serve the world at large. And when a man of knowledge and experience explains the Shruti mantra, the disciple, if he is perfectly conditioned, gains the complete knowledge instantaneously. In this mantra, the words Ananya, Prokte, and Gati have been explained by Shankara to hint at four different meanings. If the Atman is taught by a preceptor who is free from the notion of duality and has thus become one with the Absolute, the student shall have no doubts in the explanation. When the Atman, which is none other than the disciple's own self, is taught, there can be no more doubt. The word Gati may mean passage, then the meaning would be that when the Atman, not distinct from the self, has been taught, there shall be no more travelling in samsara. We may take the words as Ananya Prokte Agatihi, in which case the interpretation is that when Brahma Vidya is given by one who is himself well established in truth, consciousness, there will be none of comprehension agatihi in the bosom of the student. There are critics who try to prove that Shankara is here giving his own interpretation upon the text. According to them, Ananya Prokte Gatihi Atra Nasti must mean a simple and direct translation. Not taught by another, there is no way thither. It is true that this rendering is simple, but it is naked and horrid. Shakuntala's virgin perfections and the vivacity of her ethereal spirit are not in her skeleton, lying crumbled and burnt on her funeral pyre. They can no more smile and send thrills of love through anyone. Such a direct translation ruins the glorious beauty of the text. The above different interpretations are in such detail taken here only with a view to introducing you all into the laborious but ultra intelligent ways in which Shankar and other commentators have approached this sacred Bible of our religion before they have concluded and established the truth of these mantras. The potency of intelligence, the quietude of mind, the serenity of tempo, sincerity, faith, and devotion which these masterminds could bring to play upon their works while they were at their desk bear something of a of model of extra genius that we individually or in teams can never hope to gather and apply in our meditations upon these mantras. In short, it would be a compliment to our own intelligence if we were to accept Sri Shankara's conclusions in toto. It is with this idea in mind that we have today gone into such lengthy discussions upon the four interpretations given by Shankara to two insignificant phrases. Hari Om. We continue in next class. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Hari Om Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai.